Good morning. As Winston mentioned, we are presenting on the 2024 State Emergency Plan. My name is Abby Tarapelli, and with me is Winston Lynn, who is the lead planner on the State Emergency Plan, and we are part of the Emergency Functions Planning Unit at CalOES. For today, we will be going over the background information, where to find the State Emergency Plan, or the SEP, plan statistics, plan emphasis, and the state significant changes in content. First up, the plan background. So what is the State Emergency Plan, or the SEP? It's a high-level comprehensive description of the State Emergency Plan, of California's organization and methods for dealing with emergencies. It's a statewide framework that outlines how government agencies coordinate to prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies and disasters. It defines roles and responsibilities and systems, ensuring consistent, efficient, and unified emergency management across jurisdictions. So it covers, as you can see here, the state topographics and hazards, emergency management organization, roles of government and private sector, preparedness and mitigation programs, response and recovery operations, and mutual aid and resource management, and public information. It's high level in that it does not go deeply into every topic, but it's comprehensive in that it covers all phases of emergency management and the roles and expectations of all partners in those phases. So, where to find the State Emergency Plan, or the SEP? So you can find it on our website, caloes.ca.gov. So you can find it a few different ways. You can search for it in the search bar right here. It's just the SEP or State Emergency Plan search, and it'll pull it up for you. There is a graphic on our main webpage carousel as well that outlines the link itself, caloes.online/SEP. So if you type that into your browser, it will pull it up directly. And then you can go onto our planning and preparedness division website on CalOES and scroll to SCP 2024 to download. So changes from 2017, with the State Emergency Plan was last published in 2017. The 2024 plan updates and expands on the plan, and as you can see here, there's about an 85% increase in content. It's mostly from the addition of recovery, which was not in the 2017 plan. It covers whole community planning, and as well as integration of access and functional needs, cultural competency, equity, and climate change concepts. So from the changes here, you can see in 2017, we had 209 pages and it increased to 385, 0 hyperlinks, and now we have 117. 17 exhibits throughout the plan increased to 30, and 70 endnotes increased to 93. Continuing on with some plan statistics, the plan update began in 2019. With 77 state agencies, departments, offices, boards, commissions, councils, and authorities reviewed. We received 450 initial comments and edits received. As well as we had a 60-plus day public comment period in 2023. During that time, we had 6,762 webpage visits, over 700 views, and 750 additional comments received, including more than from 16 agencies. This happened in 2023 again, before it went to publishing. So where does the authority for the State Emergency Plan comes from? State Emergency Plan is authorized by the Emergency Services Act under Government Code Sections 8,568 through 8,570.4. It provides standardized framework for emergency response and mutual aid. by statute in effect in each political subdivision and is a resource for local emergency operational plan development. It delineates responsibilities of state agencies and departments during emergencies and was last published again in 2017. CalOES is responsible for updating the state emergency plan, and it's the governor's responsibility to coordinate the state emergency plan. For a local government to be eligible for funding, their emergency plan needs to be approved as being consistent with state planning and guidelines in the state emergency plan. And the plan, 2024 plan emphasizes updated threat and hazard definitions and descriptions, use of emerging technology, science, and research. It emphasizes integration of new science, research, modeling tools, and real-time data platforms. It recognizes climate and human-caused impacts with increasing climate-driven emergencies such as extreme heat, wildfires, flooding, alongside human-caused incidents such as cyber threats and infrastructure disruptions. And it promotes mitigation and readiness for compounding and cascading impacts. It prioritizes support for vulnerable and underserved communities to ensure equitable preparedness, response, and recovery, and focuses on cultural competency and community-driven engagement strategies. It aligns communications across state, regional, and local partners to improve clarity, trust, and accessibility, and expands multilingual and diverse community outreach to strengthen public readiness and support with the consistent, inclusive public messaging. And with the California Recovery Support Functions, or the California RSFs, it emphasizes the California RSF framework to streamline cross-sector recovery coordination and ensures recovery planning is embedded in preparedness efforts, supporting resilient and sustainable long-term recovery. In this section, we will be going over each section of the SCP, of the significant changes and the content. So starting off with Section 1, Section 1 provides the context and guiding principles for the California's emergency management system under this 24 state emergency plan. It highlights how recent disasters, climate-driven hazards, and technological threats such as wildfires, extreme weather, pandemics, and cyber attacks have shaped California's preparedness priorities. This section describes initiatives like the California Cybersecurity Integration Center and the State Threat Assessment System, which strengthen the state's ability to detect, assess, and respond to cyber and terrorism threats. Emphasizes the state's commitment to equity, inclusion, and full community planning, requiring emergency managers to integrate cultural competence and access and functional needs considerations into all phases of emergency management. This includes outreach to equity priority communities, partnerships with tribal governments, NGOs, and faith-based groups, and the work of CalOES's Office of Access and Functional Needs to ensure equitable support during disasters and terrorism threats. As well as Listos California was mentions in the launch of that, which engages a statewide network of community-based organizations across the state to boost resiliency, provide accessible in language information, advance a new culture of disaster preparedness. In Section 2, which is the basic plan, purpose, and scope of the plan, it describes the structure of the state emergency plan, relationship between the state emergency plan and other documents, such as functional annexes, hazard and threat-specific annexes, and plan supplements. It provides a consistent statewide framework for state, local, tribal, federal, private, and community partners to coordinate efforts to mitigate, prepare for, and respond to and recover from emergencies of any type or scale. It explains that the state emergency plan remains in effect at all times under the California Emergency Services Act and aligns with federal and state laws and guidance. As mentioned, the basic plan is outlined in this, which establishes policies, responsibilities, and operational priorities. Functional annexes such as the California Emergency Support Functions, which cover 18 emergency management areas. Hazard or threat-specific annexes such as earthquake, flood, wildfire, extreme temperature, and repatriation plans, and plan supplements, which include mutual aid, logistics, and grant administration plans maintained separately from the basic plan. And Winston will be covering the rest.
All right, thanks, Abby. Bear with me as we switch over presentations to me. All right, can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to be covering the rest of the presentation. So the next section of the SCP is section 3, situation and assumptions. So in here, we have a reorganized list of hazards based on what was written in the State Hazard Mitigation Plan. Some of the hazard areas that have been expanded on include energy disruption, dam and levee failures, cyber attack, and food and agricultural emergencies. Section 3 also includes an updated list of disasters that have occurred, such as wildfires, earthquakes, severe weather, pandemics, and others that have occurred since 2017. Section 3 also includes an updated description of the state population, economy, and geography, an updated list of planning assumptions, which have also been reorganized into assumptions that are based on disaster, incident, state and federal. Section 4, Emergency Management Organization, discusses the Standardized Emergency Management System, or SEMS. This includes updates on the role of state and region, the role of the State Operations Center, and the Unified Coordination Group. Also updated is information on the role of state government during emergencies. That includes updated information about the role the state judicial branch plays, and then we've added the role of the state legislative branch during emergencies. For the role of private sector, there's updated information on how to develop hazard mitigation plans and business emergency plans, along with new cybersecurity considerations. Section 4 also discusses integrated whole community planning and individual participation in the emergency preparedness process. The section also discusses states of emergency and state of war emergencies, adds essential worker legislation, which was critical during COVID-19, and has an updated list of volunteer organizations and public-private partnerships. Section 5 describes the state's hazard mitigation programs. This includes updated descriptions from the State Hazard Mitigation Plan, which was published in 2023, and also includes an updated list of state hazard mitigation programs and tools, such as My Plan and My Hazards. My Plan is a way to create custom maps for hazard mitigation planning, and My Hazards is a tool to search for hazards by area. Section 6 addresses emergency preparedness and has guidance on developing plans. This includes emergency operations plans, along with hazard-specific plans such as nuclear hazardous materials and dams, and also plans that involve multiple jurisdiction, public-private partnerships, or plans that are for recovery. Section 6 also discusses some preparedness campaigns and grants. So some of the preparedness campaigns that are mentioned include National Preparedness Month, Great Shakeout, and Preparedness Ambassadors. In terms of the preparedness grants, some of them are going to be familiar, like the Homeland Security Grant Program, HSGP, and Emergency Management Performance Grant, or EMPG. But there are also some new programs listed, such as the California Wildlife Mitigation Program and the Prepare California Grant Program, among other grants. The section also includes a link to the Cal OES Grants Management webpage and the California Grants Portal. Next, the section talks about the importance of integrating evacuation and shelter planning for access and functional needs populations, has an updated list of federal and state requirements for local plans, an updated list of emergency management trainings and exercises, and a description of some of the state's prevention and protection programs. Sorry. Section 7, response concept of operations. So in here, we talk about the state operational priorities and strategies for emergencies, including multi-agency coordination processes, some of the disaster direction and control entities. So this includes the State Operations Center, the California Fire Rescue Coordination Center, Law Enforcement Operations Center, Medical Health Coordination Center, Traffic Management Center, Flood Operations Center, and Air Coordination Group, amongst others. Section 7 also talks about state task forces and has a description of how they work and some examples that have been used. Section 7 also provides updates to state alert and warning and public information dissemination. This includes hazard-specific notifications, such as the ones that would go out for earthquakes, energy disruptions, and hazardous materials. There's updated information on the resource management process and mutual aid. And the emergency declaration process has been updated to reflect information in Cal OES Recovery's proclamation guide for local governments. Section 8 talks about the California Emergency Support Functions, or California ESFs. They describe the 18 ESFs with the 80 state agency departments and others assigned to coordinating primary and supporting roles for those ESFs. The definitions for those are coordinating entities manage other organizations that carry out tasks for the ESF. The primaries are entities that lead and carry out the majority of the tasks for that ESF, and supporting entities have resources for that ESF. And this terminology aligns with federal descriptions for the federal ESFs. The 80 state entities pre-identified in the SCP are based on their assignments in the ESF annexes and administrative orders signed by Cal OES and each of those state entities. Sections 9 and 10 cover recovery, concept of operations, and California Recovery Support Functions, or RSFs. The sections reference the California Disaster Recovery Framework, which was published in 2019. These sections also discuss recovery goals, strategies, directions, and controls. This includes the role of ESF 14 recovery in the State Operations Center, the response to recovery transition, a description about the 6 RSFs, the role of the State Disaster Recovery Coordinator, and the role of the Joint Field Office. Also in the section is a description of Cal OES Recovery Directorate's roles and responsibilities, such as during preparedness, coordinating development of state and local recovery capabilities, during response, collecting information from the ESF 14 role, and also the Directorate's role in the Presidential Disaster Declaration process, and the recovery operations programs such as public assistance, interagency recovery coordination, and hazard mitigation. And then finally, in that section is an updated responsibilities matrix, which lists 69 state agencies, departments, and others pre-identified with RSF roles and responsibilities. Section 11 covers continuity planning, authorities for state and local governments to ensure preservation of government and its services, best practices for state agencies and departments to conduct continuity planning, and a link to the Cal OES Continuity Planning webpage. Section 12 discusses state roles and responsibilities. Here, there's an updated description of the roles and responsibilities of the 80 state agencies, departments, and others pre-identified in the plan. All 80 state entities are at least listed as supporting ESF 5 management, ESF 7 resources, and ESF 15 public information. And then section 14 contains the attachments. So in this section, there are the state and federal authorities and references, an updated ESF-RSF relationship diagram, California warning system flowcharts, a list of annexes to the state emergency plan, and an updated list of laws and regulations related to emergency management. So in summary, the SCP is a high-level comprehensive description of California emergency management. The SCP can be found on the Cal OES website. The SCP contains updated information on the state's demographics and hazards, emergency management organization, roles of government and private sector, emerging technology, science, and research related to emergency management, descriptions of climate-driven and human-caused threats and hazards, discusses the integration of access and functional needs considerations, the importance of equity, priority communities, and cultural competence, and the use of consistent and inclusive public messaging. The SCP also updates references to other guiding state documents, includes updated local planning guidances, updated trainings, exercises, and state programs for local governments, discusses the state's response operations and the role of the California ESFs, talks about mutual aid and resource management, the state's recovery operations and the role of the California RSFs, and the updated roles and responsibilities of state entities pre-identified for emergencies. So that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions about the state emergency plan? And then I'm not hearing anything. Also can't see the chat, so I don't know if there were any questions that popped up in there.
Thank you, Winston. I don't see anything. I do see actually somebody is asking if, sorry, it went back up, tribal annexes. Okay, somebody already answered that. Okay, perfect.
All right. If there's nothing else, that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions or you want to reach out about the state emergency plan, you can either reach out to me or Abby in the EFPU inbox. That's efpu@caloes.ca.gov. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Winston. If you don't mind, if you could put that in the chat, that would be great. And again, as always, all the presentation slides will be sent to me, and I will send that out with the video at the end. Thank you, Winston. Thank you, Abby. I don't see any other questions in there. We will go over to Callaway as legal. Chief Counsel David Neal, are you on?
I am. Good morning, everyone. And yeah, thank y'all for being here. And I will preface this by saying that there's going to be a decent amount of information that I'm sharing. This will all be encompassed in FAQs that will be going out. Our goal is to have these go out tomorrow. As you can imagine, in this litigation landscape, things move pretty quickly. And so we want to make sure y'all are getting the most up-to-date information. And so with that, what I think hopefully would be helpful, I think to y'all will, let me turn my camera on, I just realized, is talk about kind of give an overview, I guess, as to Cal OES's role when it comes to this litigation, and then also give you some highlights as to, I think, some of the key aspects, key cases. I know Alyssa is going to be speaking to y'all later this morning, and we've been working very closely, our legal shop, with grants and with the Attorney General's office. Attorney General's office is the one who has actually filed the lawsuits. That's the state of California that is the named party in the case, and so they represent the state in that litigation. But we we work with them closely, obviously, as it concerns our grant program. So the first one I wanted to talk about is the lawsuit that has been pending that has to do with the civil immigration terms and conditions, as they've been termed, in the DHS terms and conditions, and those that apply to the various grant programs that are administered for DHS and FEMA. It's been kind of a long, arduous path. And so kind of where we're at now when it comes to the civil immigration terms and conditions is the court in Rhode Island. It was the federal district court in Rhode Island where this was filed. And ultimately the court there determined that with the scope of the various grant programs, in particular, it was like the HSGP, AEMPG, for example, that those grant programs, that the civil immigration terms and conditions were not properly included. They're not properly related to the purpose that is served by these grant programs. And so the court back in the middle of October issued an order stating very clearly that these should not be included. And actually, it was in end of September. And then DHS and FEMA then amended those awards, issued them. If you recall, they came out pretty quickly, and right before the end of the fiscal year, but then had included within them articles, as they termed them, that essentially included these very same conditions. And so the parties in that case went back to the federal district court to seek relief, basically saying that they have attempted kind of an end run around the court's order, that these provisions should not be included anywhere in the award, and the federal district court agreed. And so that was back on October 14th, they issued an order saying to DHS and FEMA, you need to basically go through, you need to remove any of these conditions that were part of the order, that are encompassed by the order, that are reflected or similar to that order. And so that did occur. FEMA issued a grants directorate information bulletin back on October 21st. And in there, and this is very key, this is as to there are 21 states that are parties to this. And so as to the 21 states that are parties, that DHS and FEMA were directed to amend those awards, and they did. And so they amended the awards that were issued to remove all compliance with federal immigration laws, articles, and reissue the amended award documents, that they were to amend all award documents that may have issued to states and their instrumentalities to remove those instances. And that is actually very key because obviously some states in the interim who were parties could have accepted. California had not yet done so. And then also to remove anything that makes it conditional, to be very clear that these terms should not be included in any form or fashion. Of course, I think as most of you or a good number of you may already know, that FEMA Go, given the federal government shutdown currently, FEMA Go is not really active right now. And so California is still waiting to see this amended award get issued. And so once that does get issued, then we would obviously check to ensure that it does comply as it should with those awards. And so hopefully that is the case, but we are working very closely with the Attorney General's office to monitor that, to ensure that happens. We know there's just a lot of uncertainty in this day and age, given these terms, but we just wanted to ensure that we are working very closely to ensure that the DHS and FEMA do in fact comply with those provisions. Somewhat related to that, though, is another case that was filed. And this does relate to the award itself. And I know this can get confusing, but there were two different lawsuits. And so what had happened was back at the end of September, if you all recall, when DHS FEMA did issue these awards, that they issued them, and as to HSGP and EMPG, there were some changes. Some of those were in allocations of funding that changed from the NOFO to the actual award itself. And then some of those also had to do with a change in the period of performance as it related to these grant programs, reducing from a 3 to a 1. And so we worked with the Attorney General's office and went ahead and filed a motion. And long story short, the court issued an order that required them to do a number of things. And it was to deobligate the funding that had been issued, and to revise the awards for jurisdictions that had received increases in fundings from their NOFO in the issuance of the final award. And then also to address concerns that if there was any statutory expiration of the fiscal year 2025 funds, that was suspended, given the courts, as they call it, their equitable authority, to ensure that funding could continue. And then also that they were required, the court required DHS to basically undertake some actions on their part pursuant to statute to record this as an obligation. And what that means is that in any event, because there could be liabilities that result, there could be a change in the funding source from litigation. There could be a determination that this is ultimately was not proper, to preserve that funding so that the funding obligation would not go away. And so that did in fact occur. They received another grant information bulletin that released to that effect. And so that was promising, at least saying that in the interim, that in fact has been accomplished. That said, however, the parties then did actually file an amended complaint, and that's why they're now challenging the period of performance reduction for both the HSGP and the EMPG grant awards. And so that was just filed last week. And so we are in the process of monitoring that, because the parties have now also gone in to seek a further preliminary injunction from the court to actually ensure that that is stayed. And that is in the process of currently being addressed. And in fact, I was just online before we got online here. Opposition was filed on Friday to that. The final briefing should happen, looks like, by this Friday, I believe is the date. And so then we should get a decision from the court as it concerns these issues regarding the reduction in the period of performance for the HSGP and EMPG grants. All of this to say, however, that again, we're then really waiting for the new award to be issued as to HSGP in particular, because that is where a lot of this litigation is followed. But then even with the EMPG award, hopefully if we get a favorable decision, that would involve actually amending that award too. to reflect, hopefully, as a restoration of the more robust period of performance. So I know that's a lot of information as to those, but what I did want to kind of summarize so you all know right now, and this will be out there in our FAQs as well, is to let you all know what Cal OES's current deadlines are.
I'm thinking about one or two people that maybe you can talk.
I'm sorry, I think somebody's inadvertently in there. We'll take questions at the end, I promise. So, but the last is just to let you all know what Cal OES's award acceptance deadlines are based on the results of litigation that have occurred. And so for right now, for NSGP and SLCGP, November 24th is our award acceptance date. EMPG is currently November 28th, and the RCPGP, Regional Catastrophe Grant Program, that is November 28th. And with that, though, as I mentioned, our HSGP award, as a result of the litigation, had been withdrawn, and then the FEMA shutdown happened. That has not been reissued, but we will update our FAQs that will be posted on our grants page once that reward has been issued and once we know what that actual acceptance date is. So, and then the last, some of you may wonder, there has been litigation filed regarding the Building Resiliency and Communities Program, known as BRIC. California is one of a number of states that are a part of that. And so California filed a lawsuit alleging that FEMA and DHS and other defendants had acted unlawfully by attempting to end BRIC. And again, BRIC was a congressionally mandated initiative. And so as a result of that, back in August, the court granted a preliminary injunction prohibiting FEMA from reallocating any BRIC funds for non-BRIC purposes, pending a final judgment, while the merits of the case were being litigated. And so with that, following up on that, the plaintiff states filed what's called a motion for summary judgment. It's basically kind of like a paper trial, if you will. That has been filed, and right now that motion should be fully briefed by November 18th. And so our hope then is that the court will issue its decision, shortly thereafter. And then we'll get some more hopeful certainty as to just what the status of the BRIC program is and what that means for California and for those communities in California who had received BRIC grants. So that's really kind of the highlights, if you will. Like I said, I know that's a lot, but we will be posting a lot of this information on our grants page in the form of FAQs. And hopefully then, we can get a lot of that interested. Oh, can those award dates be posted in the chat? Yes, we can. I sure will. Good idea. So, but yeah, so that's really kind of where things are at with litigation. Just really wanted to emphasize, Cal OES is not the party to that, but we work very closely with the Attorney General's office so that we kind of have a sense of what is happening and then work together to relay that information. But as I'm sure things are, it was already a lot going on with the litigation, and then adding the shutdown to that on top of that, obviously, just adds another complication. But we're working closely with them to be able to stay on top of it and understand what the current status of these are. So we know how all of you are incredibly interested in that and how it impacts your various locals. So I will post those dates, and then in the meantime, any other questions?
Thank you, David. I don't see anything else in the chat. Give it one more time. Okay, we have some questions. Go ahead. Is it Angela? Sorry.
This is Angela with San Bernardino County Office of Emergency Services. With all these delays, that's going to shorten the performance period. So is there any extension that's going to be sought for these grants because of all these delays in getting the funding in?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And that's part of, as I mentioned, with the period of performance challenges that were made in the litigation, because we've seen such a reduction from the 3-year to 1. That is part and parcel of that challenge. And so hopefully that, those concerns are addressed in that context too. But yes, that's exactly why that was the last lawsuit that I mentioned was amended to address the reduction in period of performance for, including the reasons you stated. So hopefully once we get a decision on that, then we'll get some clarification as to that impacts across the board.
Okay, because I know part of the reduction was to move everything to a 1-year performance period. So if these are reduced to 1 year, combined with all these delays, that's going to give us very few months to spend these grant funds.
Yeah, and I agreed. And I think what I'm saying with that, though, is that's part of why it's being challenged. There's no decision on the period of performance reduction yet.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that's what I'm saying, though. So stay tuned and fingers crossed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Kim, I saw you had your hand up. Was your question answered, or did you have something else?
I think I'm okay for right now. Because no, I'm good, thanks.
All right, thank you. And I see that David posted those dates in the chat for those that were asking. Do we have any other questions, comments for David? Not seeing any. Thank you, David, for your time and all your information. I appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. Thanks y'all very much.
Have a good one. We'll move over to Calaveras Law Enforcement Branch, Jodi Lopez and Robert Larsen for LEMA Fund. Jodi or Robert, are you on?
Yeah. Good morning. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Let's see. It's going to take me just a second. Good morning, everybody. Let me share my screen here. And Robert may or may not be on the presentation. So, okay, can everybody see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So just wanted to check in with everybody, kind of go over the LEMA Fund, talk about a couple of changes. Most of you are familiar with this program. It started out as $25 million annually with a 3-year pilot program. And so effective July 1st, 2025, they did go back and they did a reappropriation of $10 million. And it was approved for the LEMA Fund to be used through June 2029. So that's kind of a big change. Whereas annually we had $25 million. Now we have $10 million to use through 2025. As the state budget improves legislatively, we will be going back and asking for additional funding and to make the program permanent, but that's where we're at right now. Just to kind of touch base on the LEMA Fund again, it was set up to provide a fund source to support requests from communities and to allow communities to utilize the LEMA system and to get funding out there quickly to providing agencies. Its intent is to enable agencies and jurisdictions who have been overwhelmed during an emergency. The process is that the Sheriff's Office will call the Cal OES regional coordinators, request mutual aid. And once the coordinators are aware of the incident and they deploy, that's when, it's determined if LEMA Fund will be eligible for that particular incident. The assistant chiefs go out into the field. They provide support to the counties and coordination. We in the LEMA Fund provide support to the assistant chiefs, answer any questions that any of the agencies have. It's our goal to go out to most of the incidents, our team, just to kind of come out there, help set up, answer any initial questions. Once in the field, the AC coordinates, they get daily check-ins, so we have an idea which agencies are out there and how many staff they're providing. At the end of the incident, We get 214s from the agencies, and a post-event summary is completed by those assistant chiefs, just kind of giving us the details of the full incident. The criteria, which is, still the same. The mutual aid request, it can be mutual aid requested to preposition resources, undeclared events, or before declarations are known. So it doesn't have to be a state or federal declaration for LEMA fund to be eligible. The LEMA request is typically related to a state or federally declared emergency. So a lot of times that does happen, but it's not a requirement. The mutual aid, the LEMA fund does not kick in until after 12 hours after LEMA has been requested, and then there's a 12-hour period. Then the LEMA fund can be used for reimbursement. Prior to that, it's neighbor helping neighbor. Typically, the mutual aid request is for a multi-jurisdictional event, something that where agencies are asking for help outside of their jurisdiction. And also, it's typically regarding major law enforcement actions requiring, extended mutual aid assistance. It can also be used for mass casualty incidents or extended mass casualty operations. And initially, when the LEMA fund was put in place, it was used to create the LEMA portal and that database, and that was allowed for. Types of incidents: fires, storm, flooding, earthquake, natural or man-made disasters, or other extraordinary events. Eligible agencies: it is sworn members of city police departments, sheriff's offices, probation, district attorneys, and coroner medical examiners. State agencies, federal agencies, and the requesting agency are not eligible for reimbursement through the LEMA fund. Eligible expenses are responding officer overtime, backfill for responding officers, mileage to and from the incident, lodging, per diem, and fuel in extraordinary cases, and also extraordinary equipment. The process is that once we receive a post-event summary from the assistant chief and the incident and the mutual aid concludes, we will contact the requesting agency to find out if they have any of the 214s, if they're going to need an MOU signed between them and the providing agencies. We'll get that from them and help them facilitate that. Then we will reach out to the providing agencies, just kind of a initial notification email that a particular incident is eligible for LEMA fund. It's our understanding that they went out there and provided support. We will process the reimbursement requests from the providing agency as we receive them. The packets, the reimbursement packets will have 2 invoices. When we're processing that paperwork, anything that's not eligible for LEMA fund reimbursement but could be eligible through the requesting agency and their reimbursement, we will put on a separate invoice. And we also work with the requesting agencies to process eligible expenses outside of that LEMA fund. So if it is a declared event, FMAG or CDAA funding is available, we want to get those packets ready for that requesting agency so they can include that in their project. The typical timeline is there's an incident that occurs. We contact at the conclusion. We contact the requesting and providing agencies, typically within 30 days of the incident. The providing agency submits reimbursement packets. We process them in order of incident. We will review and approve reimbursement invoices and then authorize payment for those. Those get sent off to accounting and then state controllers. And then typically a reimbursement is received by those providing agencies within 45 days of the conclusion of that incident. Supporting documentation, we need 214s. We need all information on those 214s, what the activity was that took place, the name, the time. We have been asked several times if we would accept one 214 with multiple people on it, and the answer is yes. We do have a LEMA Fund webpage, and there's a lot of information available on that webpage. As soon as we know that an incident is going to be eligible for LEMA Fund, we will typically put it up on that webpage so agencies know they can go and look and know that that incident is going to be eligible for reimbursement through LEMA Fund. We have trainings on there, contact information, access to the portal, and other documents. Agencies can submit their packets to us through the portal. The portal will track everything. It will track what process that request is currently in, and then it tracks it when we send it to accounting for approval. It also will all the final documents will be uploaded, so agencies will be able to use that to access any of their previous documents that they've submitted. You know, some of the benefits of the LEMA Fund is that it does provide 100% reimbursement to providing agencies for eligible expenses. So in other words, that overtime, we do pay 100% of that. Agencies can also submit with that overtime the fringe benefits and things like that. So we do reimburse at 100% of that cost. It's quick, typically. It's a quick reimbursement and turnaround for those agencies. The online portal offers a records management tool. And we also are doing a lot of the preparation of the packets for those requesting agencies so that their staff is just ready to submit on their project. To date, we are at about $6,500,000 on LEMA Fund reimbursements. I did want to go over some of the, pitfalls or questions that we get. Sometimes, not turning in all the documentation in a timely manner. We do have a close date for LEMA Fund reimbursement, and it's 6 months after the conclusion of the incident. And so, there's a lot of times where we may have to go back and forth with those providing agencies. And then sometimes things get hung up because staff is off or there's holidays. So we do want to get those done, processed, and closed out as soon as possible. Another thing is 214 hours that do not match time cards. We will use the lower of the two. So if the time card shows 12 hours, but the 214 only shows 10 hours, we will go with the 10 hours. Because that's really more of a detail of what was worked. So do try and work to make sure that those match. We will take drive time into consideration. So maybe it's an hour there and an hour back. That's the difference for those 2 hours that weren't accounted on the 214. And we will take that into consideration and pay on that 12. If you have incentive pay that you're asking to be reimbursed, we just ask that it's broken down so we can see how you got to that hourly rate that includes incentive pay. And then your MOU and pay policy should match those benefits requested. Food, fuel, and lodging is a responsibility of the requesting agency. Occasionally, we will pay for those expenses on extenuating circumstances. Maybe it's a long distance between where the providing agency is based and where they're headed, and they had to get food on the way or lodging or something like that. Then sometimes in those circumstances, we will pay for it. Or an agency is asked to bring in extraordinary equipment. We can pay for the fuel on that. Things like those are examples of when we pay for those expenses. And finally, here's our contact information. This is also on our website. I will put this in the chat, and I'm available if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Jodi. So yeah, don't see, can LEMA support high-profile security events requiring significant resources and mutual aid?
High security, I mean, that would depend. I'd have to have kind of like an example on that. You know, if there's a mutual aid request from that requesting agency, then we take a look at it. So yeah, anything that's kind of outside of the ordinary, anybody's always welcome to send us an email, and we'll consider it. Oh, I did want to mention one other thing. We are trying to put forth some LEMA fund enhancements. And so those are going to be coming out soon. Just a few things that we're trying to expand some of the eligible expenses. We want to be able to cover some of the extraordinary SARs that go on for a while. So we're putting together some criteria to be able to do that. We do want to cover, and we will be covering, reserve officers and tactical dispatchers. And we will be paying portal to portal pay for agencies that have that they're already paying that, and they have that in their bargaining unit MOU. I see
Okay.
Ryan's has
Yeah,
his
Ryan.
hand up. Did you want to make a comment, Ryan?
Hi, Jodi. Yeah, I just wanted to expand on that last question that was asked for either special events, and I saw a note pop up. I think somebody asked, like, hey, if it's a presidential visit. So when you guys put a request into us, it's extremely helpful, not just to say, like, hey, you know, we have Coachella, or we have a presidential visit, or we have this going on, but, you know, say what that is, and then if you have any type of analysis or threat analysis for that event, if there's any you know, notable information that you can provide where you believe that there will be issues that will require mutual aid to eventually be called. So typically, like, looking at that type of stuff, that's very helpful. Where it becomes very difficult is when it just says, yeah, hey, we have this event and we would like to staff it. So, you know, is this eligible? The more information that you provide specifically to any known issues that you guys believe, you know what I mean, even if that's just open source information, that's very helpful in that matter. So when you push that forward, that allows us to take a look at that and try to advocate for getting resources for that. So that's it.
I wanted to mention, sorry, just one other thing. Robbie's not able to be on the call today from recovery, but one of the things he and I discussed and we wanted to bring up and just remind everybody is that in this, for law enforcement mutual aid, although the LEMA fund does not cover straight time, the requesting agency can request reimbursement for that straight time through their project if it's a declared event. So when we get that straight time, we will put that on the other invoice that is for the requesting agency to request during their project or submittal to FEMA or through CDAA. So it can be covered. It's just straight times can't be covered through LEMA fund. Any other questions?
Thank you, Jodi. Any other questions? Looks like we're getting a thumbs up from Kim. Thank you. I don't see anything in the chat. Thank you, Jodi, for your time and your presentation.
Thank you.
We'll go over to National Weather Service in Calaveras, Courtney Carpenter and David Meyer in regards to alert and warning.
Great. Are you guys able to hear me okay? This is Dave Meyer.
Yes.
I have the honor of introducing members of my team here that are going to go ahead and present based on the collaborative approach to alerting between the state and locals and the National Weather Service. So as mentioned before, Carpenter is one of the individuals from the National Weather Service that will be presenting, as well as Ryan Allward. And then Roger Canny will be supporting from the alert and warning side, and we'll be monitoring the comments for any questions with Maddie. I want to encourage folks that during the presentation, if you do have questions, to not necessarily hold them till the end. Go ahead and bring them up. This is meant to be an informal discussion about the collaborative approach we take to alerting with the National Weather Service. So without further ado, I'll bring on Courtney, and thanks for your time.
Thanks, Dave, for the introduction. I'm actually going to pass it to Ryan. He's going to kick us off.
Sounds good.
Hello. Excuse me. Hello. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Excellent. Okay. So yeah, my name's Ryan Elward. I'm the warning coordination meteorologist here at the Weather Service office in Eureka, and I'm going to be taking over the first few slides of this presentation. But like you said, feel free to put your hand up, ask questions. We're running a little ahead of schedule, so we definitely have time for questions during this presentation. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So the first thing I just want to cover here is what our watches, warnings, and advisories mean. So the first thing is you're not seeing the word order here. That's how the state and counties, you use that when it comes to evacuations. The Weather Service doesn't, order evacuations. That's not something that we do. And so that's up to y'all, right? So our terminology are these three terms: warning, advisory, watch. And I understand people get confused about them, so we want to make sure it's clear on what those are. So when we go into an event, you're understanding what those terms mean. On this chart here, the warning is the worst case scenario. That's like not the worst case scenario, but the worst level that we warn for. So when you hear there's a high wind warning, or there's a flash flood warning, or that means that we're talking about an imminent threat. It's either occurring now or will be very soon, and it has a threat to life and property. So what we're expecting in that scenario is that people are going to be taking protective action, or emergency management is going to be taking protective action in those scenarios to make sure that we can protect people. Advisory is the next level down. It also is an imminent or occurring situation, but it's not as high of a threat. It's more of a threat of inconvenience, I guess, is the best way to describe it. And we advise people to use caution. But if you don't use caution, it does become dangerous, right? So, I mean, if you have 3 inches of snow on the ground, and you drive too fast on that snow, you're going to crash, right? So it still means you need to use caution in those scenarios. It's just not the level of a warning where you have really, really heavy snow and whiteout conditions and, snow that's going to, put too much weight on a building, that sort of stuff, right? That's a warning. That's where we're starting to talk about warning level events. So advisories are more of that inconvenient thing. There is one caveat, and that would be, I would say, an advisory for a tsunami, where there is a dangerous threat to beaches and harbors. So it is a little bit different, but everything else, it's this level of threat of inconvenience. The last one is watch. This is something that we would issue when we have lower confidence of an event occurring farther out in time. So we might be, 3 days in advance, trying to give you a heads up that, hey, this could be an issue. And we're still analyzing. We're trying to get an idea of what the threat is, but we want people to start getting prepared for what could be a threat to life and property. We issue watches for when we would expect the potential for a warning level event to occur. So conditions are favorable, the hazard may occur, but there's still some time until it is imminently occurring. So that's when you start to do those plans. You start, pull out the plan and say, okay, what do I do for this sort of scenario, and how should I be ready for it before an advisory or warning is issued? Yeah, so I see a question about, can we share the protective actions that NWS includes in their public messaging? So each one is very different. And so you need to look at the bottom and find those for each different hazard type. I'm sure we could find a list of some that are in there so that to share, but it's not always going to be the same, and each one of those protective actions may be different for a different geographical area. So you really need to work with your local weather service office to get the information about what they're going to be putting into their statements. A lot of them are pre-canned, like we come up with, we work with the partners, or we work we social scientists to come up with what is the actual terminology that works best for that scenario. So, okay, so it's a long comment. We'll come back to that one. So you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to touch on the iPause system, go over the details of kind of how it works. I don't know all the intricacies and the insides of electronics and in the way this fully works, but the main thing of how iPause is supposed to work, it supports sending alerts from either the local, state, tribal territories, federal level out through the system to get to a multitude of alerting systems. So, for instance, on the left here, you have the federal authorities, state authorities, territorial, tribal, local, can put it into iPause. The system then figures out, based on the CAP protocols and so forth that are inside, where those messages should go and how they should be alerting, what sort of alerting pathways should be used to let people know of that threat. And each type of product has a different, number of systems that they might reach. Like you can select to reach NOAA weather radio for one. You can select if it's a higher level threat, go ahead and select the wireless emergency alert that's going to get it to everyone's cell phone, or the emergency alert system to get it onto TV and radio. All of those systems can be utilized through iPause. It's one consistent pathway for everything to go through.
Yeah, hey, Ryan, I'll jump in real quick too. It's important to understand that no one channel is the be all to end all for those alerts. We need to use all tools that are available to us for those types of alerts that require that maximum reach, and having the ability to not only alert through television, radio, cell phones, and all the other items, especially when you're dealing with big weather events, maybe lots of wind or anything like that. If it knocks out the cellular systems in the area, we would definitely want to look at other means to get that message out. And in some cases, as he stated, the earlier phases, the advisory may be something that may be posted inside a social media campaign or some sort of messaging that gets built in order to just inform folks of what could be coming and what actions might be necessary to be prepared. So I just wanted to throw it in there.
Yeah, thank you. So it's not every system is for every product and every warning alert. Like you said, these are going to be for the high end, type scenarios where you really need to get that alert out. The lower end events and advisory might not go through all of these pathways. And watch as well don't go through all those pathways. And okay, there we go. We're back. So the key is to know which ones work best. Work with for us, working with us about weather radio. What is the best product and best way to get products over that system versus working with going through wireless emergency alerts, and how do those work best together to reach the right people in the right moments? Because some are going to over alert compared to others, and do you want to be more focused with your alerting or more broad? It's very key in knowing how these systems work so that you utilize the right one. So this provides that authenticated emergency alert that can go through those systems.
Yeah, and Ryan, it's also important for folks to understand that when those events are happening, and we do have that advanced warning, so we do have some days to plan for. You will see from the alert and warning team with the state, we will put out what we call an impact statement, which is just really a recommendation of what you might want to be considering for alerting, or what type of message campaign to maybe start building in order to address the incident before it becomes something that has to be done as like a zero notice event where it's immediate and it has to happen in order to save lives. We're trying to get it out as early as we can so that folks have the ability to be more proactive in what they're trying to do.
Excellent. Okay, next slide, please. So just to give you a list of what iPause is and isn't, it's not a subscription-based mass notification system. So it's not something, like your Everbridge system or whatever you have for your county where you ask people to sign up. That's not what it is. It's not going to do reverse call dial phone system stuff. You can activate WIA, which goes to phones, but it doesn't have that. It's definitely not going to get to a landline phone. And it's not going to do text messages or emails or any of those things. So it doesn't have that capability. But it is for emergency alert and warning information. So it's the right thing, the right system to utilize for urgent information that's impacting public safety. It's the right system to use for alerting citizens in, it can be for a given area or for a broad area, but it's not for messaging about changes to, the trash collection cycle or something that's just a regular notification to let people know about, even, way in advance, like you were just saying, way in advance, giving the public information stuff, just information about like, hey, this is how you get prepared for flooding. This is not the system to use for that. This is only for that emergency alert and warning type information. So iPAS can activate the alert system through radio and TV. Like I said, it can activate WIA-capable phones to a defined geographic area. Even when cell networks are really, really overloaded during an emergency. The WIA system is actually a different system. It's not the same as a text system or the phone system. There's a different pathway for those systems to go. Yes, it also can sometimes get busy when you send tons of WIA messages, but it's still a different system and can go around, things when it's really congested. And you can send messages for broadcast on NOAA weather radio, which come into our offices, alert for us, and then we can make work with you to make small adjustments if needed to make that broadcast sound right on the weather radio. So that's how iPause works. And what the right options are for you when you're trying to use that system. Is there anything else you wanted to add on this? Okay, are there any questions? So this is kind of the end of the iPause section. So are there any questions Kelly, related to this?
I thought it might be important. There's in our Southern Region MARAC, there was and some other meetings I've been in, been some recent discussions about whether iPause works with international phones. And my in-house expert has helped us with that answer, but I thought it'd be good to maybe share that with this larger group so that there's a better understanding that it can work at times, depending on circumstances. And if you could share that information, I think it'd be beneficial.
Yeah, we can actually get some information out regarding that. I know that regarding with FIFA coming up and with the Olympics and a lot of other things, there's been a lot of focus on exactly what phones we can reach. I can pull some of that data that's come together from some of those meetings, and I will definitely share that out to the group.
And one more concept, David, if you could share, I think David probably knows this a little bit more, and if you don't, I can share, this might be on the call too. There was recent change by FEMA on iPause. This is not specifically necessarily National Weather Service, but for our counties, they made a quiet change where we can draw our maps into our neighboring counties up to 10 miles. And so if you want to share any additional information, but I think it's important for our counties to know that there's this new buffer that we weren't really notified where we can draw into another county and alert.
Yeah, the cross-border buffer is something that they did extend, and it does solve some problems that we were seeing, especially during multiple jurisdictional type events. With that change, you still have to be concerned with your messaging because you want to make sure that if it does go into that buffer, but then even outside of that area, that folks are getting a clear message on what's supposed to be happening. It's definitely the time that you don't want to use a message that indicates something that's happening in an area. You want to be specific with location, so that because that opens up a lot of questions and confusion for the public when they're talking about how large that buffer is. So
Yeah, and I think also for the agency, what agency is sending as well, not just the area. So when you have a shared event, but agencies are taking different actions, it's important to be clear, cross boundaries, that this agency is the one sending this message. But also it'd be very helpful when those changes are made for locals to be notified, because our protocols may need to change based on knowledge of these changes on the buffers. I'll just say it that way, so that we don't take actions that we didn't intend to in terms of alerting it into another county because we didn't know that buffer didn't snap back to our county line anymore.
And
So,
this is
thanks.
Jodi from Alameda. It's approximately 10 miles because it's a simplified polygon. So I'd encourage people to go to the IPAWS office and ask for the polygon for your exact county, because it's not that deterministic as it sounds. And it's very unfortunate that this was done without really publicizing from FEMA, but now we know.
yeah, Woody, it was supposed to be done in concert with some of that proximity mapping capability the FCC and others were talking about as enhancements, but that piece kind of pushed aside, and then they moved forward with the buffer. So
yeah, no, I hear you.
We
well,
didn't.
not your fault, and then of course they're on shutdown. So I realize it was a confluence of many problems.
Yeah,
but it's a good thing that it happened.
Yeah, I agree. It looks like Soraya was asking a question in the comments about any insights on WhatsApp. Do you want to be a little more specific on that, Soraya? Oh, we can come back to her. It's a question in the chat. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, so I'll just add, private companies, WhatsApp, Google, I don't know, if you go onto Google Map and you are searching for a route that you're going to travel, you'll actually literally find there's the Weather Service warnings on there, right? And so private companies can tap into the system and through the Weather Service, Weather Wire, and others to get the alerts from the Weather Service. So so one example, and I'd have to check into this, is that if you were to alert over the county border and include a polygon that goes into another county, I do wonder if it could alert for a bigger area of that county on our system. So it's one thing I would like to follow up with you to make sure that that's not something that could happen, because that buffer thing is news to me as well. Okay, so but yeah, private companies can, and it's kind of up to them. I don't know if there's a way that you can force it to get there. Of course, it's up to whether they want to allow those sort of alerts to go through.
I see Chris Santa has her hand up. Did you have a question?
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. So regionally, San Bernardino County has decided to invest in NOAA radios for distribution amongst our population that's homeless. And with those NOAA radios, we got the ones that have the charging capability for their cell phones and the solar, so that they kind of have a way to charge and get our WIAs as we shoot them down the washes when needed. And then also to our canyon communities and our senior communities who maybe have a digital divide and are so good with their apps. So my question for the National Weather Service is, as we start to develop that mission and that strategy of how we're going to educate on NOAA radios and all of that, would it be prudent to pull you in to discuss the messaging that would go with those?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Any messaging that's going with it, we definitely need to discuss how that's going to work and how we can make those messages targeted. And works for the community, messages the right sort of folks that need to be alerted. like for instance, if there's a flash flood warning for a dam, working ahead of time to know what the wording is going to be for that. We would work with some people to get, what are the roads that are going to be impacted? What are the places that we need to notify? So yeah, definitely work ahead of time on arranging that.
And should we go to our local, like we have San Diego, Arizona, Las Vegas, or is there a different group that we should be working with?
Yeah, you should be working with your local office. So depends on which area is serving that specific location, which transmitter is serving that location. Some of the transmitters overlap into multiple what we call county warning areas. For instance, we have one that's in the southern area of our forecast area that will serve the Monterey Bay weather forecast office as well. And so we work with them on making sure that coding is done right. So yeah, you might have to work with a couple offices to make sure things are working properly.
We'll pull all three in as we develop this task force. Then thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Christiana, the alert and warning team would be more than happy to help you facilitate some of that as well, so that we understand where you're going, what your methods are, and if there's anything we might be able to offer from other technology, or maybe even from the science side with our work with the DHS and the others. So if you loop us into that, we'd be glad to participate.
Yeah, that's great. We have a few different layers that kind of turned on my light bulb when you all were speaking. The AM messaging, we have something in the works for that for our public television station. So we have 3 or 4 things for those that wouldn't get the message on a cell phone app. So thank you. I will pull you guys in as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then Kelly, I see you got.
Yeah, I was kind of just noodling. I was kind of noodling on Soraya's question, and I guess I understand WhatsApp is a private company, but I think this is a statewide need and a national need, really. And so I'm wondering if maybe CalOES if there's any conversation about taking lead or at least sharing this with the national IPAWS committee considerations on this outreach to these, because this is part of this next gen, right? Or it could be, like they talk about next gen for TV alerting and, all the TVs now that just have streaming apps. And really WhatsApp is another one that really should be considered, because that's the one that's largely used by international tourism. Most international, when you travel internationally, there's a lot of people who don't even use standard text messaging internationally. They only use WhatsApp for messaging. And so I think if it's possible for CalOES to help advocate for this consideration on behalf of the state and or champion this type of relationship with WhatsApp and other type platforms, I think that would be very beneficial. We understand that they're private, but I think that would help a lot of agencies across the state and nation. So just making that plug, that if that could be an advocacy point on our behalf, I think that would be beneficial. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And as I think more about it, there's a lot of this. I'm not in headquarters for the Weather Service, so a lot. It wasn't coming to my mind immediately, but they work with private weather enterprise folks to make sure that messages are getting across, Weather Channel, AccuWeather, things like that. So that's another element, and I don't know how they've worked with Google or other companies to get those messages across. And I've written it down, and I will follow up and see about that as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to jump into wireless emergency alerts and how the system works. So there are several different wireless emergency alert messages that can go across. This was launched back in 2012. I'm sure everyone's seen them now in one way or another. And they broadcast to cell phones. They're short emergency alert notifications. They go to the cell tower from the requesting agency, and then they target a local area as best as the system can. And I'll go over some details about that in a moment. But the types of wireless emergency alerts are, a national alert. This would be coming from like FEMA presidential level to alert people about a threat that's impacting the country as a whole. This system has never been used at this point, but it has been tested. So you've probably received the national alert tests, but the actual alerting system has not been used for a real emergency. There are other things though that have, and the rest of these have, which is, imminent threat alerts. So these could be human-made disasters or extreme weather. So tornado warnings, tsunami warnings, those sort of things. It says here active shooters or threatening emergencies that are emerging in the situation that we need to save lives immediately. We need to get this alert out right now to let people know about the threat. Public safety alerts are in that same kind of lane. I would have put active shooter in public safety alert, but that's just the way I think of it. But it's essentially activating it from the local emergency management level. So you say that there's a threat level that needs to be activated. It's an imminent threat. The threat is occurring now, and people need to respond immediately to save their life or property in those scenarios. So evacuations for a wildfire, for instance, a wildfire is growing, you need to evacuate. It's an order for that area, and you need them to get out now. That's the public safety alerts. The next are Amber alerts. So this would be child abduction emergencies. Those also go to the wireless emergency alert system. And then there's some test messages that go out. But for those, you really need to opt in. So you personally, with your cell phone, need to opt in to receive test messages. Otherwise, you won't receive those. So special approvals need to go to actually do it like a live test of the wireless emergency alert system. Okay, next slide, please. So how it works from the Weather Service is that we would basically realize that there's some sort of imminent weather threat. So for us, it's going to be like a tornado, really severe thunderstorm with huge hail or something. That's something that more like happens out in the plains. Tsunami warning, flash flood warning, with verified flooding. We would activate the wireless emergency alert system. So what we do is we then issue those warnings. There's other things too, hurricane warning, dust storm warning, not issued as often for California, thankfully. It goes into the iPause system and then pushes it straight over to the cell network. The mobile network, so the mobile provider picks it up and then sends it out through their carrier system into the transmitters. And so there are over 100 participating wireless carriers at this point that are forwarding on wireless emergency alerts. Your mobile device then is detected by the cell phone tower and says, yeah, you're within the range of where this warning needs to be activated. Doesn't matter where you are, as long as you're within the cell reception, and in that polygon area, you should receive the alert. And then the wireless emergency alert arrives at your phone. It makes that really annoying sound, which is a good thing because it's getting your attention, displays the text on your screen, vibrates, does whatever it needs to do to get your attention. And then hopefully that information that you received is clear and understandable, and then you can respond in the right way. So that's how the system works.
If I could jump in real quick, Ryan, too. So that message that comes out from the National Weather Service is just like he said, it's to get your attention. It's to notify you of the bad thing that's happening. It may not be something that, as the public, when they receive it, it's going to tell them to be cautious when driving, don't drive into flooded areas, things like that. But it doesn't take into account at the local perspective what the action or protective action needs to be to the public. We actually hope that as you receive this information, you would then act on that and then act on the public's best interest from there with messaging that would then inform people of shelters or areas to avoid or things like that. So there is a local component to, once you receive something like that, being able to also maybe expand or amplify what's being said by the National Weather Service. So thanks.
Yeah, so the message that we receive or that we send through these systems are they're standard broadcasts that we cannot edit at a local office level. So when we issue for instance, a flash flood warning, it's going to have very specific words that are sent that we can't change. And so they're going to be more broad to give you the idea, get out of low-lying areas, get to high ground. That sort of thing would be in the text. But it's not going to tell you get away from this creek and this road and move to this area to stay safe. That's where the local authorities can provide that additional information to a cell phone. We can add it into a flash flood warning that goes over the emergency alert system to our website and that sort of stuff, working with you. But we can't then get it to the cell phone. The wireless emergency alert itself is a set template that goes out. So just to understand how wireless emergency alerts go, there have been different versions of WIA messages systems that have been developed. First there was 1.0, then 2.0, and now we're all the way on to 3.0. Originally with the previous systems, if a polygon, so this red polygon that's on the screen on the left, was issued for that area, and those areas that are covered by the cell phone tower intersect anywhere in that polygon, any cell phone that's in those cell phone tower reaches would activate and turn on. And so that means you're going to get over alerting for WIA messages in that scenario. So essentially, if you have a legacy phone, a phone that's unable to determine its specific location, or it's just not a polygon-based warning that's issued. In that case, it's going to alert for the entire area that cell phone tower covers. However, with WIA 3.0, things are getting more advanced. And now if the phone has that 3.0 capability on it, which is basically the newer cell phones nowadays, should say smartphones. The phone knows its location, so it actually has geocoding on. That's turned on the phone. And then there's a definite polygon that has been drawn, which we would do for for tornado warnings and flash flood warnings. Only the cell phones that are inside of that polygon will activate. And that's a huge improvement. So we're really excited about 3.0. So that's basically the big change that's happening now. And if you go to the next slide, right now for the Weather Service, just so you all know, there are 3 main alerts that are probably going to activate for wireless emergency alerts in California. The first is tornado warning. If there is a tornado, most of the time we aren't getting, thankfully, into the catastrophic levels for in California. But even for the base case tornado warning, it will activate the wireless emergency alerts for that polygon. Flash flood warnings are a little different. There are lower level flash flood warnings that are issued that would not activate WIA, but would activate the emergency alert system. Once flooding has been, confirmed, it's upgraded to what we call a considerable tag, and that considerable tag lets WIA know, hey, this is a level where it's now getting to the point where there's flash flooding starting to occur. People need to get out now, and we're going to activate the wireless emergency alert. So there is a lower level flash flood warning. I just want to mention that. So if you're wondering why it didn't go off for your area when the flash flood warning has been issued, it may be because of that. So talk to your local weather service office about it if you have any questions in a scenario. The severe thunderstorm warning also has that, where if it's really destructive, it could activate as well. So I can think of one case in California where we actually met this criteria when we issued a severe thunderstorm warning here for 90-mile-an-hour winds that were moving onto the coast here with one line of storms that was moving through. And so that would have technically activated it, but that system wasn't in place at that time. So it's possible. Then there's all these other ones that are less likely. Snow squall warnings, you're not going to see that here in California. We've already talked about those another time. So storm surge warnings and hurricane warnings both activate for WIA, and they are paired together. Storm surge warnings are only used with hurricanes, with tropical systems. So if that were to happen, which could happen someday in the southern part of the state, you could see WIA activated for those warnings. Extreme wind warning, you're probably never going to see in California. That's for like a Category 4 hurricane hitting the coast. Let's just not have that ever. And then dust storm warning is not a very likely one, but could possibly happen there in the southern part of the state. And then the last one is, we all know now, tsunami warning activates WIA. And I just want to add here, because this is a good time to mention it, there is a process going on right now to update the WIA text for a tsunami warning in the Weather Service.
Yeah, Ryan, Brent had a question too, so if we can go to Brent Blazer.
Yeah, Ryan, I was just kind of curious. The flash flood warning, similar to tsunami, I guess. Last year we had, say, San Francisco got issued a WIA from National Weather Service, reference flood warning and flash flooding. And then say our county got countywide flood warning, no notification to the public. And it kind of puts us in a weird spot, because now it's like, what do I say? Because we have all streams and no river. So, we have some very unpredicted flooding. So I just wonder if there's any changes there, or like, even when I looked over what I believe looked over the SF's notification, it really didn't delineate flash flooding versus just flood warning. So I was wondering, like, how do I communicate that best to the public? Because we have some communities that are very still, disheartened since the 2022 incident on New Year's, where they didn't feel they had significant notifications.
So let me just make sure I understand your question correctly. So you're asking whether it's the difference between a flash flood versus a flood? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I guess where can I find the best information to really define to the public when flash flooding versus flood warning, the severities, when National Weather Service is putting out notifications, and where they can find your products direct.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of variables that come into play and putting us in a weird spot of what the recommendations. We kind of get stuck in the position of, until there's actually verified requests for evacuations and such, it's kind of hard to project where the flooding is going to be for this county.
Okay. Yeah. So just in general, a flash flood warning is for flooding that happens really rapidly. So it's flashy. It happens really quickly. So where a flood warning is something that happens over a long period of time. So typically, when you have a long duration atmospheric river type event, and the creeks and streams slowly rise, and it's just raining through the day, and eventually they just get high enough that they flood, that would be a flood warning rather than a flash flood warning, because it's not a rapid onset event. Where it's really, really, really heavy rain that happens really quickly, and the creeks and streams all rise really quickly and start to flood, that would get into that flash flood type scenario. And so it's essentially, if it's happening over several hours, it's a flood warning. Less so, quickly in an hour, or 2 hours, we're talking about more of a flash flood scenario. So that's the big difference. Working on, what it means for your community specifically, I would suggest working with your local office to get the details of, which areas would, and provide your information. What is it that you have seen in the past? Where the areas have flooded in the past? And then they can look back and say, okay, well, in that scenario, when you're talking about all this flooding that happened in these areas, what were we seeing that day? And then they can work with you to say, okay, well, this is the moment, this is the type of event that's going to cause those areas to flood. Include the messaging, include the creeks in the text messages, or sorry, not the text message, the text of the flood warning product, that sort of thing. So there's a lot that can go in there.
Hey, Ryan,
so we've been going for 40 minutes, so I want to move on.
Hey, Ryan, we got a quick question in the chat also about, do we have a timeline on the updated tsunami messages?
Oh yeah, it's a great question. No, not at this time that I have a timeline for it. I just know, yeah, that National Tsunami Hazard Mitigation Program is now has the recommendation. I should say the National Tsunami Hazard Mitigation Program has provided the recommendation, or is about to the Weather Service, for what that may be. And the National Tsunami Hazard Mitigation Program is essentially the states and territories that have tsunami issues, working with the Weather Service to develop consistent alerting and other things for tsunamis. So
great. And I think there's some comments in there regarding the ability to provide input on some of the editing for the tsunami messaging. I think that's something that my team would be happy to collect that data, working with the coastal communities and the others, and we could present that to whoever we need to present it to as we go forward. So I think that would probably be able to keep things going. So.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that there is the tsunami program, tsunami earthquake program with Cal OES that has been working on that and has been requesting input. So
yeah, we make sure they get the input or that they're involved in any of those efforts. So that would be great.
Okay, so keep things moving. I'm gonna move on, but Brent, we can I can chat more with you and work with Brian, of course, in Monterey. So now I'm passing it off to you for the next slide. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Roger Kinney. I'm a Senior Emergency Services Coordinator with the Alert and Warning Program. And I'm really glad Dave and Ryan really touched on quite a few points. And when we're looking at NWS, within the state of California, there's a lot of special considerations that we really need to understand. So last year, we did have kind of a large tsunami alert that hit the northwestern part of the state and stretched all the way down to the Bay Area. And a lot of the questions that we were getting were, what are the roles and responsibilities of the state, NWS, and of the locals? Now, a couple things that we need to establish going forward is that NWS will not send out any cancellation notices. And specifically with tsunami alerts, we're not going to get much advance notice of those sort of things, and they're not going to be sending out evacuation orders. This leads to a big understanding of message evolution, right? Local alerts should build on the NWS messaging that goes out for tsunamis, right? The footprint. They should be able to escalate escalate to evacuation warnings or orders, updates if and when it's needed, and then proceed to downgrades, all clears, or closure type messaging. Now, with that in mind as well, roles and transitions. Okay, so we're treating messaging as if it's a story, right? It has a start, middle, and an end. NWS will start with the tsunami advisory. Then it leads to local government having primary alerting authority within their jurisdiction and the operational area coordinating alerts within their county lines. Now, a couple things you can do is you can do some pre-coordination and planning for those type of events, right? With the NWS messaging going out, it's important to be able to pre-coordinate the neighboring jurisdictions or pre-coordinate with the neighboring jurisdictions on things like triggers, templates, and their roles and who will be sending what out at those point in times. Now, in the guidelines, it does provide an outline for alert and warning programs to make sure that during these sort of very short-timed events, that jurisdictions can be as prepared as possible and be able to provide their communities with the most updated information. Next slide, please. Now, this leads to, what does this look like specifically in the state of California? Okay, so local counties know their jurisdictions best. We understand this. This is brought up in the guidelines multiple times, and therefore it leads that the operational areas have the most responsibility in coordinating the response for their public, right? Counties can send follow-up IPAWS messages to areas alerted by NWS, but not directly affected to reassure them. Now, when it comes to SEMS, it's very specific on saying that local officials are the primary alerting authorities for their operational areas, and they do lead all of their coordination within their jurisdiction. The state, in this case, provides more of an more as advisors. We're able to provide training, any sort of guidance, and we're also able to provide a 24/7 support when requested during impacts that may exceed local capabilities. Now, Dave did a fantastic job mentioning that our impact statements are when we're able to be afforded a little bit extra time on planning, and we try to provide information that would be valuable to those impacted locations, right? And we make sure that we don't send them out to the whole state itself, but specifically we analyze the situation and we're able to provide that update to the local authorities. Now, typical information flow when it comes to NWS issuing a tsunami alert would mean that the local alerting authority confirms the IPAWS, right? Currently, the tsunami alerts go out countywide. However, in future messaging, they will be more targeted. Now, when they confirm those sort of messaging, we should see the local alerting authorities sending out either WIAs or opt-in systems or more refined polygons. Now, this is all subjective based on the local alerting authorities and what works best for your communities. Now, another factor that is brought up is some counties have subjurisdictions. Some counties retain the ability to alert, and some counties have the ability to provide access to IPAWS to subjurisdictions. Now, if you have subjurisdictions within your county, it's important to make sure that the county is coordinating their messaging with their city level or special district level alerting authorities anytime it has to deal with issuing escalations, downgrades, or even message closure. Now, Kelly brought up a really good point about the cross-jurisdictional alerting. Now, we all understand hazards cross lines. Okay, they do it all the time, especially with the tsunami alert. Now, it's very important to build those relationships with your neighboring jurisdictions, using MOUs to mirror, expand, or even synchronize alerts effectively, and share your templates and Polygon libraries for any sort of known risk that could possibly cross jurisdictions. Now, I touched on it a little bit more with the with sub-jurisdictions within the OA. And if cities and tribal nations or special districts have access to IPAWS permissions, it's really important that operational areas have a clear documentation of who's going to initiate what. The coordination within an operational area is paramount to making sure that we avoid any conflicting information during an incident itself. Maintaining that sort of a live roster of authorized senders and channels with localized training and approval paths can avoid a lot of localized confusion. Now, when it comes to messaging and throughout a whole incident, again, it's like a storybook. You have a start, a middle, and an end. As an OA, should always try to plan the end of the story, right? OA should send out downgrades or all clears through appropriate channels and capture lessons through internal review processes or improve templates, targeting, and coordination for next events. Now, also with message fatigue, providing correct information when your communities need it best prevents most message fatigue and ensures that your community doesn't resort to other sources of any type of unvetted information. I came from a tribal nation, and again, any sort of messaging that goes out has to be specific to that agency. When I was with the tribe itself, we didn't use IPAWS, we didn't use opt-in messaging, and the one thing that I found best worked for my community was a Facebook page. As simple as Facebook is, it reached the best audience. It reached all the tribal members. They had trusted individuals on that site, and they were able to provide information and have that sense of security with that sort of communication channel. Next slide. And Courtney, any questions?
Yeah.
Oh.
Alex.
Go ahead.
Hey, this is Alex. Thank you very much, Roger, for elaborating on the IPAWS and tribal government and tribal nations, how that works inside. So, but can you just add more on and how the tribal government can enroll into the IPAWS and how Cal OES, you specifically, and David, your team has helped them on verifying those type of activities throughout the year, and how you and your team work with the tribal government through our office to make sure that those IPAWS systems are working accordingly. With that said, just want to mention that in California we have a good number of tribal government that does have gaming programs or gaming facilities that definitely brings a lot of jurisdictions or populations into the tribal government, tribal land or territory. So that iPod system would help them just to message out during an emergency. So I think more information on that coming from you, David, and Roger, that will be beneficial too.
Yeah, thank you, Al. That's a great question. We actually have the ability through the state of California, through our RAVE platform, to make that mass notification system available to the tribes, so that if they did want to establish their own, they could do a mass notification system, or if they wanted to step up and be able to do iPause messaging through the WIA capabilities, like you said, in order to reach folks that are visiting the tribal communities in the gaming platform, the other areas that they're there, they certainly have the ability to become alerting authorities, and we can work with them to provide them the detail of what's required, and then work with them to train them on how those messages would be sent, and what the best method would be for them to get that system set up and implemented. And we can give you more information on RAVE later in the presentation. We'll drop some information in the comments for any tribes that might be listening that might be interested in that.
I also want to add one other thing in, Dave. So recently as well, within iPause, they have upgraded their systems to have now what's called a missing endangered persons event code, and look at it as more of a refined version of Amber. And one thing that I noticed from coming from a tribal nation as well is, sometimes it's hard to be able to get those sort of messages out for any sort of communities, for marginalized communities. And oftentimes it may get caught during that request process. And the MEP system event code allows Native Americans to be able to send out those missing notifications for tribal members. And that's something that I was going to be introducing to the tribal members within the state of California, and making sure that they understand this is how you can use this code to your advantage, and make sure that the communities are taken care of appropriately.
Yeah, that's a good point, Roger. We want to work with Alex and his team to ensure. I know we've already done a one-pager, but we've also want to continue to work on that outreach so that they better understand the what's afforded to them with that new code, because it definitely will help with some of the items that maybe don't meet the Amber criteria. So
yeah, thanks Roger and David to bring it up. Also, we have an internal conversation within our team, and we're gonna have you or any of your team member just to discuss this during one of our tactical calls. So we'll communicate with you then. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Alrighty, thank you. I'm going to move us on, and we're going to hold questions till the end of the next few sections here, so we can try and make it through and not go over time. But briefly, just going to touch on Emergency Alert System, EAS, and NOAA Weather Radio and how those things play together. So most of you are probably familiar at this point. It was the National Public Warning System. It became operational in 1997. And authorized authorities, so federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial, can use the system to deliver important emergency information. So the FCC manages the EAS system and has defined weather and non-weather EAS codes that are used for broadcast. So it's sent through broadcast TV and radio, satellite, digital audio services, satellite providers, cable TV, and wireless cable systems. So I will say that note there at the bottom that the National Weather Service generates about 90% of EAS activations, typically for short duration weather warnings and watches. These messages will interrupt radio and television to broadcast emergency alert information, but it is voluntary system for commercial broadcasters. So these typically play in audio messages, screen crawls, and displays, and can support additional languages. And typically these cover large geographic footprints, right? Those WIAs are typically those targeted polygons. EAS typically is for a larger area like an entire county. So on our end, we use NOAA Weather Radio, NWR, to broadcast continuous weather information and activate EAS alerts through the National Weather Service. So that map here on the left is all the transmitters that cover the state of California. You can notice there is overlap, but there are also good portions of the state, especially in the mountains, where there is no coverage at all, right? So the transmitter gets blocked by the elevation. So it is not a fail-safe, one-size-fits-all, especially here in the West due to our terrain. So we use the same digital protocols as EAS, and we also can broadcast those non-weather emergency messages, which I'll touch here in a second. We activate NWR automatically, so it will set off that really loud alert for tornado warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, flash flood warnings, tsunami warnings, snow squall warnings, and dust storms warnings in the state. It also can be activated for high wind warnings and blizzard warnings at forecaster discretion. And we typically do a weekly test every Wednesday between 11 a.m. and noon, unless there's significant weather. So that is a good way every week to test the reception of those alerts. It also, in non-emergency situations, just broadcast continuous weather information over it. So on the left here, I'm not going to go over all these. These are all the same codes that we use for weather radio. We also have the ability to do those non-weather related messages. So those could be your evacuation immediate warnings, fire warnings, 911 outages. Those sorts of messages can also be broadcast and triggered from our end. So there are two ways to achieve NWS dissemination of those NWIMs. Traditional method is that your public safety agency used to be, you would call us and say you want something broadcast over NWR, and you would call us and send us your text product, and we would type that up and ship that over our system. The latest over the last several years is enhanced via iPause. So this, when you're in your iPause system, you can check on an NWIM button, and it will achieve WIA and EAS activation, as well as NWS text product and weather radio dissemination with that same or EAS code. A few things to keep in mind, and we've learned over the last several years as this process is rolled out. We only get your alert if your agency is authorized by iPause to send NWIMs, and you select NWIM or whatever it says in your iPause thing. You check that off in your alert authority software. Without review, this is the important thing. This comes into our system automatically, and it disseminates the text product to the public using the exact language that you entered into your alert softwares. So if you have special characters, if you have, you're typing out license plate numbers, it's going to disseminate automatically without a lot of context, just through our system. And if you have kind of complicated shapes with a lot of vertices, it's going to alert the whole county over NWR radio and our INWS alerts. So if you're sending out an evacuation immediate NWIM for one street in your county, it will go over the NWS systems. If your polygon is complicated, it will alert the whole county. We found this out with some fire warnings in the early stages of this. Obviously, there's potential for duplicate EAS activations when the alert is for more than one geocode. And we always suggest, if you're thinking about using these in the future to help spread the word, that you coordinate with your local NWS office before you need to use them, so that we can talk through how this process works on our end. Any questions on EAS or NOAA Weather Radio? All right. One last thing to mention, if you're looking for ways specifically to get weather service alerts, if you haven't heard about it, we have something called INWS. You can sign up for an account. Recommend using your work email address, so that official.gov.oes.ca email. You can register into the system, and then you can set up an alerting area. You can do that from a point, for a whole county, for a custom polygon, and you can add whatever alerts you want. So if you just want flood alerts, or you just want winter storm warnings, severe warnings, you can totally customize to what type of alerts you'd like, and it will send a text and an email, and or you can do both, to you pretty much within seconds of us issuing that product in our system. So that's another way for you to get our official alerts straight to your cell phone. So that is all we had. We appreciate all the questions and discussions, and we're happy. We have a few more minutes here. Happy to take any additional questions or comments.
Yeah, in the comment field, there's one from Jorge Rodriguez regarding PCA. Obviously, we still don't have an exact time frame, right, for when that's going to be available, and it will depend on the local area or the local station on whether or not they can accept it. But what PCA is partial county alerting, and it would be, once it's implemented, you would be able to send alerts to areas that are kind of zoned out within the county. So it wouldn't be a county, all county alert. It would allow EAS to become more targeted with the different messages that would go out. And there is some testing that's being done in Sonoma with the National Weather Service. And I know that they've been doing some good work down there, but we still don't have a date yet for it. We were hoping it would be next year, 2026. But we'll keep an eye on it, and as it becomes available, or as more info becomes available, we'll certainly share that to everybody.
Yeah, and once the Weather Service has any updates, we'll be rolling it out through our local offices as well.
Yeah. Well, that concludes our presentation.
I have one other thing to add in there. We're also updating the alert and warning guidelines. I will provide the form in the chat itself. If anybody has any questions regarding that, you can reach out to any members of our team. We're looking for all input to be submitted by January of 2026.
Yeah, and just to cap on what Roger said, any input that can be provided would be very helpful. We've had so many different things that have happened over the past year of when we were did our last update, that we really want to take a look and make sure that this guidelines is reflective of not only what's going on in the community of alert and warning, but also that it's meaningful to you guys and that it's able to support the needs you have as a quick reference point, so that you can send out proper alerts and get alerts done without having too many difficulties. So any input you can provide would be great. We're going to go through all of it through the SEMS Alert and Warning Specialist Committee, and we look forward to the input so that we can get that update done. Thanks for your help.
Thank you very much for the presentation, very informative, and all the notes that are in the chat. Thank you very much. Don't see any other questions or comments. We'll go ahead and keep moving forward on our agenda to Cal OES Disaster Planning Unit, June, for the Catastrophic Incident-Based Plan. June, are you on?
I am. Good morning, Melanie. Appreciate that. We here in the Disaster Planning Unit are delighted to have be fully staffed. And so I'm actually going to hand it over to one of our new staff, Jason Davis, who is going to provide just a quick update on the Catastrophic Incident-Based Plan. I see he's sharing the screen. Jason's very capable. He's been spending the last several months getting more familiar with the plan and the process, and I look forward to him working with all of you. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, June. I just wanted to confirm that you are seeing the proper screen, and it should be just the cover page and not the one with the notes, and that you can hear me.
Yep.
I need a verbal confirmation. Thank you. Awesome.
Got you loud and clear and see the slide.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for that. I think it was great that our counterparts, Abigail and Winston, talked about the state emergency plan as a great primer for what I'm about ready to talk about. So what this figure implies is a relationship between the state emergency plan and the catastrophic incident-based plan. There's so many plans out there, sometimes it can be a bit confusing to try to understand and differentiate them. So just a quick differentiation. So the state emergency plan is it's a more broader document that provides a framework for emergency management within California as a whole. While the catastrophic plan is a specific plan that focuses on coordinated response to specific catastrophic incidents. And to add to that, the hazard mitigation plan and the continuity plans are counterparts or companions to the CIBP as well. The CIBP is a bridge between the state emergency plan and the suite, and you'll see the state emergency plans up at the top of the tier with the continuity plan and also the mitigation plan that I spoke of earlier. Now at the bottom, the base is our base plan. Now on either side of that base, we'll see our hazard-specific catastrophic plans that are specific to the regions or events themselves. So that's the basis of that. Small agenda, just real quick. I introduced myself, the newest member of the Disaster Planning Unit. And what we'll be talking about is just kind of a briefing of the way forward concept. We'll talk about that. Some people may be familiar, some not. The status and updates, and what we have as a review period for our CIBP plan, and then kind of the next steps, what we're planning on in the future. So moving forward, it is important to differentiate, to understand what catastrophic is. Some people may think that those are interchangeable with a disaster. They are not. This is a catastrophic incidents are in rather than hundreds. They're talking about thousands of casualties, as you'll see in the highlighted bullets here. Disruption of critical infrastructure is going to happen. More than likely, will have long-term and economic impacts. That an interruption of government operations, along with long-term economic impacts, will end up needing immediate assistance from the federal government. So, moving forward, the catastrophic planning is a widespread impact of catastrophic incidents, and makes it one of the most important topics in emergency management today. So we talked about it's going to just displace tens of thousands of people, isolate those from any typical resources. In a disaster, there are plans for that, and California hasn't had a shortage of disasters, and we were able to overcome those. We have the resources for that. Catastrophic incident is beyond that. Okay, it's the next level, and ultimately, what we're looking at is to bring through the catastrophic plan is to try to bring that incident to a more manageable status, essentially bring it back down to a disaster, so that we can manage it like we have in the past. So that's kind of the premise. It's good to keep that in mind as we're moving forward, the definitions of catastrophic versus your disaster. So in 2022, we were able to, while we're continuing the modifications of some of the other plans, we took a step back and reviewed whether or not what we're doing is working, and we did a plan comparison and started looking and discovered that some of the strategies ultimately are varying between each of the different plans. And these are the four that I mentioned before, that the base plan gives reference to. And so again, we can see that some of them were broad, some of them were more targeted, some were more coordinated focused, others are mitigation focused. So what we did is we looked at how we can integrate these plans, streamline them, make them more comprehensive, and that was our findings were, and really what stemmed the way forward concept. So the way forward concept is a document that was approved by the director based on the assessments that we did in the planning and process and existing products. So we've identified that consistent plans, we can make them more consistent, more capability focused and concise, and then we can help facilitate and try to find gaps in the process by training and exercise. So that's really what the way forward concept is we're going to make things more consistent, capable, and concise through the CIBP moving forward. So the 2008 CIBP was referenced as an annex of the state emergency plan, and each of the successive hazards or geographic specific catastrophic plans are annexes. So the 2008 concept of operations, it applied to response and recovery phases of catastrophic incident, but it also outlined essential elements and entities that estimated through their estimated timelines, for instance, like 12 hours and 24 hours and 40 hours, which was very much an arbitrary number for to have a capability estimate completion. So we reviewed that, and that's where really the plan differs quite a bit between the 2008 and now our 2005 CIBP. Yes, it focuses on response and recovery. It's not like the SEP plan where it's an overall plan for emergency response in California. The CIBP is specific to the response and recovery concept of operations. However, it differs by describing the lines of effort and the capabilities of the state's 17 emergency support functions, and defines the desired outcomes as an end state goal rather than, as I said, that arbitrary timeline. So the 2025 CIBP is not a standalone plan. It captures planning factors, assumptions, and mission objectives from existing suite, and those are those four other documents or plans that I was speaking of. And this reduces the redundancy. There was a lot of overlap and redundancy. We're trying to make it more concise and simple. So that's essentially what that is. So recent examples of organizational structures bringing together the capabilities to achieve these end states. We can see through mass care shelters, social services helps with that. The emergency fuels is not a standalone unit. It has multiple entities. The energy division and the Cal OES all work together. So it's a capabilities function using multiple assets to have that structure achieved. And all right, so here, this is a really great depiction of an event, an incident, where you have every incident will start locally and expands throughout time as the incident gets evaluated or is the response to operations are needed based on the size of the event expanding. So again, the lines of effort is what we're focusing on, not a time base. You don't see a time in here. There are phases. Yes, we'll have pre-incident, we'll have our operational phase, and then recovery and restoration. But the lines of efforts, what we're focusing on, and as you see, the further on we go down the timeline, the more federal state support we will need to help that local entity. And then as the incident subsides, then we return back to our normal new ready state and back to the local. So that is just a depiction of the local core capabilities, state, federal, and then our recovery as it's seen through this graph. Okay, so our planning process review is where we're currently at for our 2025 catastrophic incident base plan. We're step 5. We're in the review. We're reviewing the planning process and sending out our plan for those to look at. And we also are fostering some briefings and get some feedback from some of our partners as well. And then we'll be opening up a comment period here shortly. So we're anticipating that comment period here starting in November and running towards the end of November and into December. We already spoke with our interstate partners in UASI. Now we are also speaking with our MARAC partners today. So what we're looking forward is to push out the survey form to our regional partners, and they can disseminate it as needed, and this will open up the comment period. The back end of this, I'll be collating the different comments, making alterations as necessary, and essentially making our plan modifications before it gets sent up to executive review. So this would be our open comment period for that, and we'll give access here to our regional partners. So feedback has been received to build more collaborative meetings. This is something that we've learned from those briefings I was speaking of earlier. So will occur once the CIBP review process is complete. We will start reaching out to our regional partners and talking about the next steps, really. After we get the CIBP completed, then we'll work on the training and exercise program portion of that. I wanted to get too far into the weeds with that, but just know that that is the next step, and that we'll be looking for collaboration with our regional partners. So how can the MARAC participate? And that is what I was speaking of, is that training, as we all know, it builds on the existing response and recovery capabilities, but we also were able to find our gaps through that process. So our regional mutual aid coordinators will definitely be involved. We will also ask that we look to private utility representation, because those private partners are critical, especially for some of our critical infrastructure. Let's say anywhere from 80 to 85% of our critical infrastructure is privately owned, so they need to have a seat at the table as well when it talking about getting catastrophic incidents and lifelines to our communities to a manageable level, and to a state of, as I said earlier, to something that's more manageable to a disaster, and then eventually into something that's manageable to regional and then our local levels. So looking forward to that. And then, consideration of unconventional public-private partnerships. Now, in a catastrophic incident, by definition, it is already exceeded the capabilities of what we can do. We'll be looking outside the box, a normal means and methods of getting help, and so that's something to be thinking about. Keep in the back of your mind when these gaps are found that break that system and escalate it from a disaster into a catastrophic incident. Then it's that we may need some unconventional partnerships that we didn't think of before to help bring us back into that manageable level. So, and that's what MARAC is all about. And then so the conventional and local and state mutual aid resource, right, we may not be available, but we can consider immediate assistance from other resources, such as private industry and volunteers. Our interstate compacts, if something affects us, it'll also affect them. So we may not be able to depend on all of the resources that may be in an existing plan that we had already established. So if our neighboring states would normally provide resources such as search and rescue, well, if they're already in use in their state, then we have to, again, think about Plan B. And that's kind of what the concept of this trainings will be all about. And then our EMA as well is another thing to consider. We have it in plan, but the resources may or may not be available. So what's the Plan B? So with that, here is our contact information. Again, my name is Jason Davis. There's a link to our catastrophic planning page on Callaway's site. And either I can front any questions or I can punt them to June. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you very much. Do not see any questions in the chat. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
I did answer the one question from Kelly. Thank you for that question. Yep, not seeing anything else. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it, and nice job.
Thank you so much, Jude. I appreciate it. Okay, we will keep moving on to Callaway's Grants Division. Chief Alyssa Adams for HSGP application updates and allocations. Alyssa, are you on? Chief Alyssa Adams, are you on? Okay, we'll come back to her. I don't see her on right now. We'll go over to Callaway's Recovery. Gurbir Singh?
Oh, I'm on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Can you let me know if you can see my screen fine?
I can see it.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Gurbir Singh. I'm a civil engineer here at Callaway's Recovery. I am also the Safety Assessment Program Lead. For this presentation, I'll briefly go over the program objectives, kind of showcase what our capabilities are, and also provide new updates to the program that we have going on. So the basic objective of the program is to get survivors back to their homes quickly as possible. After a disaster, a lot of folks are displaced and are in shelters. So the program is meant to be quickly and safely assess structures or infrastructures to either get communities back up and running, whether it be for public utilities, essential service buildings like grocery stores or pharmacies, or just residents to get back to their homes. And also, this is a great way to identify areas that need to be revisited for repairs or demolition or whatever it may be that this app data can be used for by the local government. So here's a list of our licensed and credentialed members, but I do want to emphasize that anybody can take this training. There's definitely ways to be a support role in the program, but these are the inspectors or licensed professionals that are have the ability to go out and actually place placards or actually sign off on assessments. We use multiple different types of workers within our group. We have our DSW coordinators, which manage small groups of SAP individuals. We get most of our folks from the local and volunteer side of things, which is the local jurisdictions or private volunteers. But we also work with, if not most, but a significant portion of state departments that have engineers and architects and geologists. For our non-state workers, they do sign the oath of loyalty and are granted some permissions from us to perform these types of works. So some of the disasters that SAP can cover, the big one is earthquake. That's the one that SAP is known for the most. However, we do cover floods, tsunamis, and siege, hurricanes, and this program is a national program. So a lot of this is utilized in the East Coast as well, especially places like Florida and Texas. So that's where most of the hurricane events tend to happen. Tornadoes are also a pretty well-known SAP deployments, especially in the Tornado Alley region of the country. Debris flows, mud flows, lahars, explosions, snow loads, and fires are some of our newer disasters, but we do have experience with those as well. And fires being a recent one, where last of 3 of our deployments have been to a fire incident, that being the Lahaina Fire, Park Fire in 2024, and we were at a supportive role for the LA fire earlier this year, and also Chinese camp that happened a few weeks ago. So some of the roles that we coordinate with the local government typically is just deputizing our SAP folks when they arrive. So essentially they become an extension of the local jurisdiction. We ask them to coordinate the SAP assignments with us, along with providing tools and supplies. We do have a MOU that can be signed prior. It can be signed now, just have to coordinate that with us. We're still developing a new version of the MOU, so there might be some delays, but we do have the green light to sign MOUs prior to any incidents. So this way the MOU is not a significant hurdle when it does come to mobilization. And also we share and accept any data that's collected by the disaster. So here's the basic framework of inspection procedures. So when an incident occurs, there's just rapid assessments or windshield assessments where either CAL FIRE or designee will go up and down streets, identify areas of concern. Then what happens is we do rapid evaluations, about 15 to 20 minutes per structure. That's where our SAP folks come in. They place 3 different types of placards, green being inspected, yellow is restricted use, red being unsafe. Following that, for key infrastructures or lifeline infrastructures, detailed evaluation is recommended. Along with any questionable structures, you would perform a detailed evaluation, which tends to be about 2 to 5% of total evaluations of a given disaster. The last thing is engineering evaluation. That's kind of where SAP is out of scope for, meaning that would be up to the local jurisdiction or the private citizen to have an engineering evaluation done on their structure. Here's the green placard, and obviously jurisdictional stamp would go in here. Example of a restricted use placard and an unsafe placard. So SAP resources essentially work the same as any other resource. It can do mission tasks. So imagine if you need additional resources from CalOES, SAP works the same way. But we do ask that the local jurisdiction commit a reasonable amount of resources or a reasonable amount of engineers within their jurisdiction to the disaster to help get through the assessments faster. So here's some new things that SAP has been working on, and I'm going to switch screens briefly to cover these with a more visual example as well. In the past, SAP has been recognized as one entity, but we're trying to have a rebranding essentially of our operational sides. that being CalSAFE, California Structure Assessment for Field Evaluations. And this rebranding you may have heard of as VOC in the past, but essentially what it comes down to is that's where most of our members' digital SAP IDs are. Their profiles are accessible, and we're working on a heat map for all SAP members. So if you're ever interested in knowing how many SAP members are in your jurisdiction, we're hoping that that map will easily help you identify the members in each county. We're possibly thinking of working all the way down to the city level, but so far the county seems like the easiest way to create the map. Currently, we have almost 5,000 local members. Those are local government workers in the program, almost 1,400 state workers in the program, and 4,000 private citizens in the program as well. So we do conduct testing and trainings annually. This is kind of new to us as well. We started this last year, and this year is the first time we used the word CalSAFE. We do an annual Great Shakeout exercise, and I'll go over the metrics briefly. We also did some SAP exercises last year. San Jose, we simulated an earthquake exercise. This was a tabletop workshop. Santa Monica, we simulated another earthquake. This was more of another workshop, but it was more of an exercise simulation. But it was on over Teams. But this year we're working with El Dorado County to simulate a fire, and we're going to be performing this in person. So we're doing this exercise November 17th and 18th. Day one being a ESC activation and working on SOC mission tasking, resource requests and deployment, covering all those procedures and making sure everybody's on the same page. We also will be utilizing the OES virus plane and to map out the simulated area and do some data analysis on how many structures were damaged, see if we could find a way to have some sort of change detection or remote sensing capabilities. Day two will be November 18th, where we'll do some boots on the ground evaluation, where our SAP inspectors, volunteers, will go out there and assess some structures in a state historic park. We'll also have our IMAT team developing an ICP in that area. We're hoping to bring out some trailers, kind of simulating an actual incident, essentially. And another way we can also coordinate and test our CalSAFE digital forms, which again, I'll cover in a brief second here. Lastly, I do want to emphasize that we do have new resources that are available. A lot of these are upon request, and leadership does have to approve them for others to use, but we do have digital forms available for every type of disaster. We can provide support for our platform as well, and also just be a subject matter expert. So if you ever have SAP questions or SAP needs, just feel free to reach out to us at any time. And a lot of folks tend to be a little cautious about using our forms, but all of our data can be imported and exported in a pretty easy way. We do have a new online training available. It's on CSTI. It's self-paced and free. It's can be taken anytime. It covers the same content as any other instructor-led SAP evaluator training. We are working on a quarterly coordinator training. Of course, with the LA fires this year, it was a little difficult to manage these trainings, but hopefully 2026, we're looking at a quarterly training. And we recommend supervisors or emergency managers to attend that training to get a better handle on what SAP does. And we're also working on our annual Train the Trainer as well. And every January, we'll host one. And this way, if there's any individuals in your jurisdiction that want to become trainers themselves and provide training to their staff, they can. That being said, I'm going to jump over to another window to show you guys some of our digital tools. So here is the Great Shakeout test that we conducted on October 16th. We sent out a text and an email to almost 6,500 folks in the program, out of which almost 2,100 folks responded yes. And this is a way to kind of test drive and make sure everybody is still attentive to the program and is aware that the program is still active. Out of the 2,100, 1,600 were evaluators with a few coordinators, some supporting members, and some trainers. And out of the evaluators, we had a good breakdown of our local workers, which was about 568 local workers. We also have a good number of private volunteers that responded positively, alongside with a handful of different state agencies that responded. And I do want to display, so these this CalSafe tool allows us easily to create dashboards and provide safety assessment rapid assessment forms. It can be broken down to different disasters. This is a comprehensive form that covers every type of disaster. We've developed this through our historic knowledge and subject matter expertise. So again, it is available upon, of course, our leadership's approval, but it's very simple and easy to create, and it will develop a dashboard specifically for your jurisdiction. So the data is restricted, meaning only your jurisdiction and the people we approve would be able to input data and view it. Of course, we can make public dashboards as well. So all these tools are very fast for us to generate, matter a few minutes to maybe half an hour to create a dashboard and get a form specifically for your jurisdiction. That being said, pending any questions, feel free to contact us, email us, or call me at any time. But any questions?
Thank you. It looks like in the chat, is there an ETA for the CalSafe website being live for county OAs?
We are working on the heat map, or it's kind of like a page where you can find your local SAP members, but our website would have the links available. Maybe hoping by the end of the year we'll have one ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. Kelly, did you have additional? Go ahead.
Yeah, follow up. Based on what you shared, it looks like it's a ArcGIS based system. So with the report format that you mentioned that could be exported, is that an ArcGIS layer, or can it also be exported into other formats?
It could be exported in different formats. The easiest one people like is Excel. It can have a lat and long of every structure we assess, and we could sync the questions with your GIS layer, and that way you can import the data easier.
Okay. And then additionally, can that system be used for a localized emergency where we're not necessarily activating SAP, but we just want to be able to have a standardized safety assessment process?
Yes, that's the intent, and we're slowly pushing towards that. Again, right now, we still need leadership approval for every jurisdiction, make sure that they're aware of where this program is being used. But the intent in the near future is we want to standardize one form type for everybody. So different jurisdictions aren't using different platforms, and it just kind of gets everything out of sync. So this is like a first baby step, essentially.
Yeah, we've just to share that Santa Barbara County, we've been struggling with that. We've created a system using ArcGIS Survey 123 to do field reports of damaged facilities, and then that gets assigned out to our building safety assessment agencies based on city, county, and unincorporated, and then reported back. But it's been a difficult process because everyone's on something different. So just for awareness, we would have interest in having accessibility down to our city level, because often we're going to need to integrate with those agencies as well on something that creates building damages. Thanks.
Sure.
All right, thank you very much. I don't see any other hands up. Don't see anything in the chat. All right, thank you so much, Gurbir, for your presentation. I'm gonna go ahead and go back to Alyssa Adams if she's on. Okay, I'm not seeing her on the call and I'm not hearing anything, and that's going to be the end of our presentations for today. We're at the end of our agenda and it looks like we're done a little bit ahead of schedule today. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you very much to all the presenters for your presentations. I've been getting a few of them via email, so anybody who presented, go ahead and email those over to me and I'll send that out with the YouTube video of today's meeting and the presentations. Our next statewide MARAC is going to be February 2nd. I'll be sending out the invites for that shortly. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Everybody have a great week.